Welcome to Impact on the Ground with Tiia. I'm the CEO of a Tech for Good company and very eager to make a difference. This podcast series is for anyone who is interested in making an impact. And we wish the listeners, consist of charities, companies, social enterprises, government bodies, just individuals who really are interested in making collaboration in order to deliver value more efficient and more democratic. It's all about collaboration, yes, and we are here to talk about how this works in practice. We focus on the dynamics between those who have something to give and those who actually do the beneficiary work on the ground. Today, I have a privilege to have Kat Mason here from a charity called MediCinema. She's the CEO of an organization doing fantastic work, and she's going to tell soon what it's all about. And she's been working in the organizations already 6 years, so has a good knowledge of her organization, but also collaborations between charities and companies. Hello, Kat, welcome.
Hi, Tiia, thanks for having me.
Well, pleasure. Tell us about MediCinema.
Thanks. So MediCinema is a fantastic little charity based in the UK, and we're all about improving the well-being of patients in hospital by bringing them the magic of the silver screen, so movies and magic, to their hospitals to make them feel better with film, which is our little tagline. But really, it's about reducing isolation. It's about increasing the opportunity for patients to get off the ward and do something completely different and normal, and all of those activities and escape their reality for a couple of hours, and actually the impact of that is much longer than those hours that they sit in the cinema, but the impact comes back to helping them to feel better, to recover quicker, and to build a resilience and have a positive experience of being in hospital that has health benefits that we know behind it. So we actually build proper little cinemas in hospitals, like a cinema you might go to, a small cinema you might have in your local area, all made up specially to have patients in with a variety of conditions. So there's a space for beds and wheelchairs, and we have nurses on shift, so it's all clinically covered. And we try and get as many patients as possible to benefit, and they come and see current releases. So again, like your local cinema, they're going to see what's on at the moment. It might be Bond, it might be one of the Marvel films. It's one of the things, and then they can share that experience with their families and their loved ones for free, and talk about those movies in real time and experience some nice little bit of normality.
So do you have popcorn and fizzy drinks?
It's a question I always get asked. Unfortunately, no popcorn and fizzy drinks, because you often have patients who are what's called nil by mouth, so they're not allowed to have anything other than water. And you wouldn't want little Jimmy sitting in his seat or in his bed listening to the kind of chomping of one of his
I do get it,
and not able to have it.
So you said you're a small charity. What does it mean? What's your turnover annually?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So last year our turnover was 1.2 million, which is it was quite a lot higher than our previous years. We're on a path to growth. So at the moment we've got 6 cinemas and hospitals around the UK, and our aim, and we reach about 25,000 people a year, patients through patient experiences, and our aim by 2025, before COVID struck, was to double the number of cinemas we've got and triple the number of patients that we're reaching every year. And we will still do that. We're on track to do that, but so the growth path and our income is on hopefully on an upward trend. Obviously with COVID, and actually our financial model relies on working very closely with the film industry and with the cinema industry, and obviously this year has been a very challenging one, for them and for cinema going. So we've had a sort of a hit of a similar level. But it will come back again. It's just an anomaly year. So this year it'll be about 600,000 turnover, about 50% of the income.
So how much of your turnover is actually coming from the companies, and do you get them other type of grants, or does NHS pay you to be in their locations?
Yeah, no. So we've got a sort of a diverse income stream, set of income streams behind the charity. We don't take any government money, so we don't take money directly from the NHS, and it's definitely a charity provision. But we do have partnerships with the charities attached to the hospitals that we work in. So for sustainability and for, skin in the game, and for making sure that that partnership is really strong, we work really closely with them, and they do support the local costs of each of the cinemas. It then means that every time we add a cinema on, you're not adding costs that you then can't cover centrally. So it's a sustainable type model. But about 50% of the charity's income comes from working really closely with the film industry through a variety of means, with all the companies, the film distributors. So that's the sort of Disney, Paramount, those kind of guys. Making the films and distributing them, and the cinema chains as well. Very strong partnerships there, and one in particular is View, who are kind of very solid partners of us. But across the whole of the cinema industry, we work closely in partnership with them, and we do a number of things that collectively raise money for the charity, which is fabulous.
So is it so that these companies or corporates, when they're actually supporting you, are they giving, let's say, films to be watched without royalties or something, or are they actually supporting the films on top of cash money that you can build cinemas as well?
Yeah, so it's both those things. And it's really a set of partnerships that we've been working to build over. So MediCinema has been around for 20 years now. This year was our anniversary, big anniversary in COVID year.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
New era, time for innovation, I guess.
Well, exactly, and a time to kind of refresh and to look back and to kind of reconnect with the mission. But no, so it's both those things. So, but right from the start, the film industry, the distributors have donated all of the films that we show, which is brilliant. And actually, we couldn't and wouldn't run without that donation. It's just too expensive. So for us, one of the key things is about making sure it's clinically safe. So it costs us £12.60 for every patient that comes into the MediCinema, which actually is really low, and it can be that low given that we've got clinical care in there as well. And again, we can't and wouldn't take a nurse off a ward to be in the cinema and leave the rest of the patients without a nurse. So so we do engage nurses as well. But if we didn't have the donation of the films, that would be significantly higher. And so it really is people that is the cost of running MediCinema. It's the cinema manager and the nurses, and to make sure everyone's safe. Really.
What do you then offer in return for these companies? I mean, how can they then benefit from this, other than maybe tell on their website to their stakeholders that yes, we're doing it? What other things do they get from you?
I think it's a broad range for each of the individual partners. And I think for the cinema industry as a whole with MediCinema, there's a really obvious connection and connectivity between what we do and what we're trying to achieve with the power of cinema through to people who can't access it, against what the industry is trying to do, which is obviously bring the brilliant content to screens for people to see on the big screen. So there's a real synergy between what we're doing, and really we are taking what they produce to an audience that can't access it and benefits from it absolutely hugely. I mean, we all, whenever I go to the cinema, I always kind of escape for a couple of, you got to get reset, you escape. There are so many benefits even when you're well, that and they're multiplied hugely when you're unwell. So there's a real obvious connection, and then with each of them and each of our kind of campaigns or if we're doing a specific campaign, then we work on things like social media spread, we work on profile, we probably do PR stuff together, and it's really the kind of the combination of altruism and a sort of a commercial savvy element about that connection. So it's great to be able to shout about a project and talk about how it's doing good at the same time, and I think we both get a magnifying glass from that. That makes sense. It's really positive to be able to talk about that. And there's a huge component.
I would like to just add, because I think it's kind of when come to think of it, that movies it's such a huge form of art, and like you said, that it really affects people all across the globe. People are nowadays especially watching the same movies, and not just that American movies go all around the world, but it's also vice versa and stuff. So it's a really good way of increasing knowledge, cultural knowledge, diversity. A lot of difficult topics but interesting topics can be brought out, and it's a great form of art and kind of education form. And I guess it just shows its power.
Yeah.
If you can demonstrate this impact, what it has for people who are actually struggling with their health and their close ones and stuff, and suddenly they get like empowered or get energy
Yeah.
about it and stuff. So it's kind of a like other aspect of that movie, that it's not purely entertaining, it can
Yeah.
be even more. um,
Absolutely, and all our evaluation just it underlines that. So we hear that from patients every day, and the word that has stuck with me right from when I started is lifeline. So people often say, God, it was a lifeline when we were in hospital, just knowing that we could go after the ward and go
yeah,
to see what was on at the cinema, in inverted commas, at
yeah,
their local MediCinema. But actually, statistically, it really does make an impact, and we do evaluations twice a year with patients. So we're not trying not to kind of be in their face, asking them all sorts of
yeah,
questions about their experience every single time, but we make sure we do enough that we know what the impact is. And it's really hugely impressive, actually, more than we thought it would be. All of the indicators for well-being are in the 90s, basically. So
yeah,
you've got, it reduces isolation 93%, 92% improves well-being, 92% reduces their anxiety and stress. And I think a really key one when you're somewhere like hospital is about that sense of normality,
yeah,
that being you, just being normally you, not kind of not a patient who's completely off on a limb or has lost all of their own kind of control of the situation. Because when you're in hospital, you suddenly lose control, and you're
yeah.
in doctor, and your whole routine is identified for you. And it's 96% of respondents to our survey say that it gives them a sense of normality in hospital. I think that's just
Yeah, well, that's great.
the other side that you were talking about there was about shared experience. I think it's that
Yeah,
being together and the connectedness, and then the ability to discuss what you've watched and to have differing views, and to, it can be as lighthearted or as sort of heavy hitting as you want it to be, but you're talking about something that is shared with other people, and is completely different from anything around medical events or
yeah.
anything else that's going on in your life. And that's just so freeing, I think, for
Yeah, and
patients.
especially if you're in a hospital even longer period, and it doesn't have to be a week or 2 or whatever month. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, you then kind of, maybe formulate social contacts that you wouldn't otherwise. And
Yeah.
you can start easily talking and not just sharing your private medical history, which is
Yeah.
not something what everybody wants to do anyway.
No,
But,
exactly.
yeah, sounds
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
I want to now ask you, Kat, to think about this kind of success of yours, I would say, from the other charities' perspective, who might not have this kind of a cause or activities that are so directly to link certain industries. There are so many charities working with kind of even topics with stigma. There might be HIV, there might be, like we've been talking with, let's say, herpes charity, who is, even their trustees don't want to reveal their names because,
Yeah.
there's a stigma around herpes, and who would be a corporate who would, support herpes, or eating disorders, kind of a taboo amongst adult people, which is maybe think, it's just the young people suffering bulimia, anorexia, but no, actually most of the eating disorders are amongst adult population and come in different shapes and forms and so on. So what kind of advice would you give to these charities who might be working with these non-sexy topics, if I may say, and they would be seeking for company support? Do you
Yeah.
have any
Yeah.
advice for them or ideas? Or because
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of struggle that they don't know who to approach, what to do, what can
Yeah.
we offer in return, and so on.
Yeah. No, it's a really important topic. And actually, way back when in my career history, I worked for a charity called Pilot Light that brings together senior business leaders and charities. And so I had a kind of a cross and to help them with strategic planning, basically. And I had I worked with a number of charities across all different range. So prison charities, that kind of thing, rehabilitation charities, all of that. It is really tough. You're right. I think MediCinema is unique in one way in terms of our industry side. That there is a really obvious uh, uh, industry for us to work with. Having said that, it's taken us a really long time to get those sets of relationships really strong, and for it to be really obvious to the industry that they should be working in the way that they do. But I think there's a clear reason for that and a rationale for that. I think when you haven't got that, the one thing that all charities have got is a cause and a reason why they exist. And it's really about, for me, I think it's really about digging into what is the problem that you are addressing, and why is it important to people? Why is it important to you as a charity, and therefore why would it be important to other people? And defining from that who may have an interest in helping you solve that problem.
Yeah.
And you're right, the pool is going to be narrower for something specific, but there will always be a sector or two, or individual companies who will have an interest in that. It could be local to you, so it could be that you start with geography and say, look, this is where we're working, and these are the issues that we need to address in this area. And because you work in that local area, we've decided to approach you to have a conversation. But it's sort of about finding people who have a similar viewpoint, who understand the need, but you've got to present the need really, really compellingly so that they get it. And I think it needs to come back to relevance, really.
Yeah.
So what is the relevant thing is it locality? Is it the area that they work in? So, you know, for something like a herpes charity, is it one of the is it a health-based organization, something like that, where there's a real kind of clear connection? And then how do you make it sexy? I mean, that sounds awful, but one of the things that I didn't say earlier, but I should have done with the, you know, what do the film companies benefit from working with MediCinema? A huge amount of that is about staff morale and staff engagement, I think. And you know, we've seen really this winter, we've ended up seeing quite a lot of our partners who are really struggling just doing challenges as a company, which is amazing. So we had one yesterday. E1 and Hasbro did a Monopoly board day of joy. Paramount did a fantastic fundraiser earlier on, and for example, Disney has got interns doing internal fundraising, and that's about kind of getting the employees involved and taking part in some way, and doing something tangible that they can feel really good about, but also doing it as a team, so it's kind of team building. So I think, again, as a charity, if you can come up with structures and ways and means that ignite sort of get people excited about what you're doing and how you're approaching it. That doesn't necessarily need to be about the cause. It just needs to be something that they can take part in. And I think then you can find routes but fundamentally, you first of all need to find a company that's interested and has a similar approach to what you're doing and wants to help solve that problem that you are fixing. If that you're trying.
I think that's a good point here. The employee angle, that when companies are thinking that, okay, what kind of a cause should we support? And I think traditionally I would think that, you know, the employees themselves, or sometimes company deciding to, let's say, support cancer, you know, cancer research or cancer charities, you know, they have done it from the viewpoint that cancer is touching everyone. And that's kind of like a big common cause, which is kind of just like no-brainer to support. But then when we come to these, like I mentioned, herpes, eating disorders, they are pretty much the same. They are actually very widely spread, touches every single one of our lives through our friends and family and so on, and can have a lot of influence on daily lives and kind of the lifelong health and all kind of stuff. These are just to mention a few. So I think I've been many times thinking that should the companies really kind of think about that, okay, we take this kind of widely spread, whatever it is, regardless of the stigma, you know, it could be even chosen because it has a big stigma, because you can really point out that say that, hey, we recognize there is this kind of a problem, which is actually causing more problems with people and affecting our society. And this is kind of our society support, and which also touches our employees. And then there might be something else maybe to support, which is directly linked to their kind of industry or what they actually do. Because it could be just whatever they do, you know, could be still guided to this kind of a more common cause, which is widely spread. And of course, like you said, companies might then even think about the third angle. What is the local cause? What is relevant to exact the locality of their office or branches or something that then could be even more kind of a unique approach, where even the staff can be more involved in maybe choosing, you know, the course or something. Just like kind of we are trying to kind of really open up this discussion, in my company with companies, even the smallest one. It doesn't have the big corporates or something, but how could they open up their eyes and minds to more different kind of causes and not just give to the same old same. Not saying that they wouldn't be good charities, but like we know there are very important causes that are really struggling and living with only grant money, which might be diminishing in certain areas, and there seem to be no future. But then the topic what they are working with is super important.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think one of the key things when you're in it's exactly that. It's being broad and being open to ideas and to the relevance of different causes, from a company perspective, and from a charity perspective. When going into that, I think it's about really presenting the case and using real life examples and real life case studies to dig into, how this also has an impact on people's lives in a way that cancer does, or being in hospital, or all of those things that are more kind of traditionally viewed as sort of easy. Everybody knows it, everybody gets it, it's a big cause, but you do have a bit more of an uphill struggle when you're dealing with something that is not is just not so well known as a cause to be funded through company or individual funding. It's absolutely true. And I think the other thing is that if you're a type of company that likes to take risk and likes to invest in areas and likes to kind of be at the forefront of stuff, then definitely you should be looking at stuff that's not in the public eye. You should be, I think that makes sense. That's sort of kind of, again, a sort of a synergy point to say, in your business, when you have your business hat on, you're driving new things and looking for areas that are underfunded or areas that are under supported. Well, why don't you just, attach the same thing to your charity hat and open it up to look at causes perhaps that don't get the spotlight in the same kind of way, but are equally important.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that and kind of how you sell it and take the broader story, which then comes to the do you know your impact and the impact chain. So just talking about the immediate person, maybe suffering from a certain illness or being in a life situation. How is the closest one and the broader network affected, and how things can change in the longer term? If something is addressed, the life path can be this, but then if it's well addressed, it can be totally different. Because I'm not referring to now the causes that I previously mentioned, but like you were saying about the criminal or prison-related charities, ex-convicts. There are a lot of different topics that if you get out of this kind of inherited loop of poverty, a disadvantage, circle of crime or something, the effects go beyond generations and generations. It's a life-changing and generation-changing kind of a loop, what you can present. Of course, you don't have evidence for the future, but I guess then it comes to building a story based on the past experiences and measured like indicators or stories, like you said, that they are also stories. Not everything can be measured in high quantities, and it's not like a yes or no tick a box, some kind of a questionnaire that you answer. But there are places that you can gain evidence of kind of past experiences, and then you can project at least something for the future and get also expert statements and maybe build a case there. So you help then the funder building their case, like a communication case with it. And we have to admit anyway that corporate funding seems to be in the UK maybe 5 to 6 billion maybe to charities. There is no exact data about it, but increasingly the sector would benefit from company funding, any kind of company contributions, whether they come from money or products and services, which then save money because government money and all these grant maker money, they are not like constantly increasing, and there are just more severe problems and challenges in the world, and these kind of COVID cases don't necessarily make them disappear. It's on the contrary, we will be curing this society for decades from certain trauma and what kind of trouble people have been going into. But yes, I think the corporates should kind of also get the benefits from the collaborations like we were discussing, and therefore the charity sector and charities and social enterprises working in the courses should be prepared to give the stories and promote the stories and help corporates to communicate better so they can build their reputation and their brand with these stories. Corporates cannot just support things out of nothing.
No, absolutely.
There's no, of course, everybody, individuals want to help. Every single corporate member, the CEO wants to help, the board people want to help, but they also need to make profitable business. Yeah. So everything has to make sense in some way. And I don't think it's a bad thing if you kind of look at it in a good way, that it also, like you have to think about things from that angle.
Yeah.
And I think that has helped you also grow, because you are kind of, you share the business mindedness. It's not just like, just doing good and that's enough. It's kind of, in order to grow, you have to be kind of operate like a business type, like you have to have a growth path, which then supports also the funders.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right there. And I think the thing for me in terms of corporate partnerships, I'm going to say partnerships, is partnership.
Yes.
So it's really kind of going in and then finding a company or a charity that you have things in common with and a desire to do good with. And we were talking about doing good, and then being brutally honest, I think, with each other about what does that mean and what do you need out of it. So what are your goals? What's the company's goal going into a charity partnership or a charity relationship, maybe we should say, because partnerships has a sort of specific a lot of people think of it in a very specific way, but I think it's broader than that, and it's about just aligning your objectives and saying, how are we best going to collectively achieve that? Is it a grant directly from the company? Is it working together on a campaign that also has an awareness piece for both the charity and the company that brings back that brand benefit? Is it doing something? So one of the things that we've been doing with the film industry, and again, this has taken years to get off the ground because it's really complicated, is when the cinemas are open, is twice a year doing one screening, a preview screening of a film, where all of the cinemas take part and the distributor donates that film for that one day. It's just one day, but it adds an extra element of publicity around the release of that film. So MediCinema gets the proceeds from that day, and we all work together to really push the marketing, and it just helps bring more people in to see the film. So there's a commercial element because it's driving more people to see it, but at the same time we're benefiting, and then we also get to show it in our cinemas. Again, this is quite unique to us, and it's, as I said, it's taken a while to work it out for us, but this is very unique for this specific scenario. But there will be others for everybody's charity and places. There will be something like this that you need to do a bit of brainstorming to say, well, what are the amazing ideas that we could pull off? And they will then take, if they're like that, they will take time to do. I think that's the key. If you've got to get lots of partners involved, or you've got to work something through, it's not necessarily going to be, you meet on Monday and you're doing it on Tuesday. It might be 6 months, it might be 2 weeks, it might be 3 years. It depends on what it is. But yeah, it's about finding that collaboration and what works best, and then just being really, really open and honest. And I think that our best corporate partners are the ones that trust us. Social side, we trust them on the business side, but if we turn around, and as we did at the beginning of COVID, and just say, look, this is the scenario, this is now the challenge that we're dealing with, we need to be completely we've had to shut all our cinemas, we're completely pivoting our services to make sure that we've still got access for people in hospitals at bedside and through activities and things like that when we can't physically be there. Can you come with us on that journey, and what can you do to help us support that? And within a month we were providing free film at bedside, again with the support of the industry and the support of two other corporate companies who donated their kind of services to make it happen.
So how did it happen? So how did it happen? Tell me.
So so basically, when you're in hospital, that there are these sort of big screens by your bed, run by a company called Hospidia, and you can access all sorts of content on them, and it's paid for content, and some of it's free. And behind that, there's a sort of between that and the film industry is another company called Film Back Media, who deals with all the distributors, so all of the content that comes through. And we had done a very one-off thing with Hospidia, with the partner Disney actually as well, around The Lion King earlier a while back, to just put The Lion King on patient screens.
Yeah.
And they donated that, and it was very sort of time limited. But we just went back to them and said, look, this is the issue. People in hospital are now, significantly more isolated than they were before, and they're already significantly isolated.
Yeah.
No one can visit, no one can go in. You've got
Yeah.
people who just have nothing, and just hours and hours and days and weeks and months of
Yeah.
boredom, and also the heightened anxiety at the beginning of the
Yeah.
pandemic, and they're in pain anyway, and as vulnerable individuals, they were more at risk. So there's all the, and everyone's suddenly wearing PPE. It's just like it's an awful situation
Yeah.
for the hospital when it kicked off. As with a lot of people. But so it really was just presenting the case to say, can we just try doing something? Is there a way we can make this work to get something out there? And both Hospedia and Filmback Media, and then all of our normal partners who deliver the content, responded so wonderfully to that and said, yes, let's do it, let's get it turned on.
Yeah.
Here are, and to their point, it's like, this is what we can do. Here are the parameters of what we can do. And from our side, it was like, okay, how can we find the things and the content that is going to work within those parameters, because they're quite relatively rigid.
Yeah.
But it's because we're using existing technology and not building something new, because we need to do it very quickly. And we got it set up, and we got it rolled out into the hospitals that we're in, and it was fantastic, and got huge response to it. And then obviously the prices continued. So we'd originally said, let's get this set up, great, maybe we only need it for a month, and then we can turn it off again. And then going back to them and saying, okay, definitely still need it. The reasons, can we still do it? What are the sticking points for you? Are there any commercial sticking points? Are there any charitable sticking points? How do we kind of work our way through? And real credit to both those companies and our ops director Paul Diggle for just working through that and navigating through it collectively, and saying, okay, being open about what the issues were, and finding stuff that worked, and then continuing it, and then presenting cases, and also kind of doing some research and some evaluation again to say, well, what's the impact, so that we could go back to them to say, and that they could go back to their stakeholders to say, look, we know here are some stories of people and some pictures of people enjoying it. We had this one lovely, lots of lovely feedback, but one specifically, and I think this we pivoted to do this, and actually we will reimagine it into our service delivery, because there's a long-term piece for it. Somehow I've got to work that out next year. But it became clear that there was this lovely boy in Neverlina Children's Hospital in London, who has to come in and do dialysis like 4 times a week, and he's 7. He's tiny, and he has to come in and sit there with these machines and everything. And his mum just said to one of the nurse staff, because we obviously weren't allowed to be on ward at the time, whenever he comes in, he's really anxious, and he's worried about the procedures, about what's going to happen to him. But we're so delighted about the MediCinema channel, because now he comes in and he's not thinking, oh my god, what's happening. He's thinking, what film am I going to watch today? And he bounces in, sits down and enjoys it, and then he's looking forward to the next time he's coming back, which has completely changed their hospital experience from previously.
Definitely.
Little stories like that, and as alongside surveys and nuanced feedback about the value and the rest of it, I think adds up together. But discussion, I think, and trying to find creative solutions that work for everybody, and just understand everybody's point of view. And then on the back as well,
there are also these device operators. Even in a larger scale, you can be thinking about pads and whatever in future. And also, I don't know how you innovate the social aspect of this. Like you said, it's such an important thing that people go to the cinema and share their experience. How can they share the experience?
How can they share it when they're at bed?
In the future, I'm not just saying that this COVID period, but in the future, what is the social environment that could be built so that you still wouldn't be kind of seemingly watching video alone?
Yeah, exactly.
There might be something,
more of a collective experience and the shared. Because that's a hugely important part of the MediCinema piece. And so this piece will never take over from the cinematic side, because it's such a depth of impact from just coming off the ward, and the cinemas actually look like real cinemas, so you don't feel like you're in hospital. You walk through the doors, and every time, if someone hasn't been, they sort of go, whoa, I was not expecting this. I was expecting a TV screen, and it's just sort of that. It's sort of, I don't know. It is a bit magic, actually. It sort of kind of brings a little bit of dust that they go, oh my goodness, there's something more than just sitting in a bed and feeling rubbish.
I really
need to find out how you can do that at bedside. We won't get the full amount, but we'll work out how best to do it. But Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kat. This has been very interesting discussion and lots of ideas. And I hope that your peer charities got ideas, but also the funding side, you know, got ideas. So I want to repeat myself once more, like a company and even grant maker side, like looking into strategically, looking into maybe courses that are directly linked to your staff, or directly linked to maybe your other like stakeholders. And then there might be something that, you know, courses that are linked to exactly kind of your industry or product that you're doing. And then there is the locality aspect of it. Then you know, then of course there are then in other like axes, you can think about, you know, the ways of supporting as well. That is it money? Do you still require staff? Should they also volunteer? How could they engage, you know, fundraising, all that bit. And then, you know, also then having the honest discussion, what you said, with your partners. What are you actually looking for? And be, you know, kind of really honest about it, that yes, we need something for our staff, for instance, or we need you to come to 2 events in a year and speak. We need you to, you know, give us testimonials that we, or testimonial videos from your beneficiaries, and then you have to, or you don't have to, but you go and look for them and look for volunteers. So I think it's like a sponsorship beneficiary benefits sharing, and it's just a deal, really. But it still doesn't have to take away of the excitement and in the end the impact what you're making together, you know. So that's of course then the excitement, but yeah, it's good to collaborate when you have the terms and conditions in place and everybody knows what to expect and what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree fully. Thanks for having me, Tiia.
Thank
It's
you
been
so much.
really fun
And,
conversation.
thank you everybody who has been listening. Kat, where do people find you as a person and MediCinema?
A good question. So MediCinema is on medicinema.org.uk, and we're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well. I can't remember all the handles, and Twitter, of course.
Yeah.
But it'll be MediCinema or MediCinema_charity for different ones. And I'm also on Twitter at CatMasonMF, and on LinkedIn as well. I'm not very good at Twitter, I have to admit. But yeah, do get involved. And if anyone's interested in the charity and finding out more, then yeah, reach out and be happy to tell on more.
Okay, thank you everyone, and this is Impact on the Ground with Tiia. And if you want to learn more about giver recipient collaboration or any impact related topics, just visit whatimpact.com. You'll find more podcasts and blogs and white paper material there, and of course you find it us also in all major social media with the handle What Impact. So thank you very much.